A lot of dumb videos online these days. Big waste of time. I scroll through Instagram, I'll scroll through Reddit, scroll through Twitter. I can't say that I'm really a fan of any of those platforms. TikTok, I don't use TikTok whatsoever. I registered my name Razimus on TikTok just so I could have it. Then I came back like a year later and someone took it. So I registered it and someone just snagged it and stole it from me. So that was weird. That alone makes me 0% interested, but it's just for kids. It's for... As if Instagram's images and videos weren't filler enough. TikTok somehow upped the ante. You know how Twitter's all words? Some videos, some photos. Instagram's all photos, some words sometimes. TikTok is just 100% videos with 0% words and just snagged and taken from somewhere else. Not even from the original poster sometimes, you know. Reddit, very much not a fan of Reddit. It's, I don't know. Just the typical Redditor knows what the typical Redditor is like, okay? Discord, I was never a fan of Discord. I have a Discord, never use it, never turn it on. Unless I'm trading with someone in a video game. And even then, I don't want to use it, but I'm forced to verify, blah, blah, blah. Reddit is, Discord. Discord is just a modern day IRC. Back in the 90s, late 90s, I used IRC. And the popular IRC program, MIRC, is what I used. I went to channel Ultima, went to channel Art Bell, and the channel was marked with a hashtag. So hashtag Art Bell, hashtag Ultima. Those are two of the channels I went to. UO, Ultima Online. Not on any great length, but you know, in the height of Ultima, I was there in channel Ultima. And usually as Dr. Pepper or ZE, Zay. So I wanted to make a video that's actually interesting. I know this is I started it too non-interesting, but is what it is. You can delve deep and get beyond this nonsense. Spirits exist. On one of those platforms I named, I mentioned, you know, how that video's fake. Those guys are comedians. Of course, they're on the front page because they really don't investigate ghosts. They might as well have a script and they're actors in some type of comedy group that's not particularly funny. It's kind of like, whose line is it anyway? But instead, none of them are funny. And it's set in a haunted house. It just comes off very boring, very dull. All the evidence is fake. Their reactions are fake. They spend $2 on equipment. See, I don't put down people on how cheap their equipment is. You can definitely get a LED ball that lights up at the 99-cent store. And you can take that LED ball, let's say a bouncy ball that lights up when you bounce it. You can take it to a haunted house, and you can ask a spirit to set it off, and a spirit can set it off. So I don't make fun of the fact that someone only spends 99 cents on some equipment. I make fun of the fact that these people could claim to be professional ghost hunters. They have 1 million subscribers, they have 1 billion views, and they spend no more than $10 on a made-in-China K2 meter. Maybe put a little more effort into the science. Otherwise, I see it as a comedy skid. If I was starting out, I'd definitely use a 99-cent bouncy ball with LEDs that go off. I'd use the $10 Made in China K2 meter. But I consider myself a lot well beyond that. And so I invest big bucks, my entire bank account, into ghost hunting equipment. Now, I don't really need to at this point. I have a huge amount of equipment. If I see something that really jumps out as unique, one of a kind, and limited time only, and I have to have it. There are some amazingly talented inventors, and if you don't grab it, sometimes they don't want to make it ever again. And so, you know, I am interested in a couple pieces that are like $250 for the cheapest one. And so I got to save up my money, you know. I was going to get a old-fashioned tri-field meter, and I saw the tri-field meter company post one on Amazon with the case, new. I was like, oh, it's a pretty good deal, discount. Considered getting it. It sold like that, and they discontinued it 100%. Now they only sell the digital ones. They only make the digital ones. But the company that makes the tri-field meters says the new digital ones are like 30% more accurate than the old ones. So if they're more accurate, then maybe I will just stick to the new one. I do have a brand new digital tri-field meter. I've only used it 1 or 2 or 3 times. Very few times. Mint condition, works great, not for sale. I was once contacted by a Hollywood person saying, oh, you have a store where you sell equipment and you make equipment and you sell and you make stuff and you sell it? No. I sell 0% of the things on this channel. See this Dragon Fruit Red Bull? Red Bull didn't pay me a single penny to drink this, all right? I just happen to like the flavor, okay? I've literally been paid $0 for anything I've ever placed and shown. There's 0 ads inside of my videos. On 2 occasions, I was given a free book by the author themselves, and I reviewed it and talked about it. But I refused to take money. I don't know. I'm not into taking money to product place anything. I would theoretically be open to the idea if it exactly matched. If Red Bull said, hey, we want you to, we'll give you some money, drink one of these every single video, I'll be like, heck yeah. So if it's something I already like, I'd be open to it. I was contacted by a makeup company. They were going to give me, I don't know, some small amount of money to talk about makeup. Clearly, they mass spammed every YouTuber in the world because I don't wear makeup, all right? So, so I've been contacted by weird people. I was contacted by an energy drink company. Never heard of it. And they just mass spammed people again. Like a year later, I responded like, if you send a sample of your energy drink, I'll give it a shot. And they didn't reply after that. But I do like Red Bull, you know. So I'm going to delve deep in this video. I'm going to actually delve deep. Skip past all the nonsense. I'm delving deep. Speaking of product placement where I don't get a penny, I'm really a big fan of this pomegranate Mountain Valley natural spring carbonated water. It's freaking delicious. It's not just pomegranate, it's blackberry pomegranate. And so the blackberry tastes so good. The pomegranate, can't really even taste it. I just taste blackberry. And I guess the pomegranate is so perfectly mixed. But I'm a huge fan of Perrier, for example. I love the grapefruit Perrier. That's my favorite flavor of Perrier. I grew up drinking Perrier. Love it. Huge fan of it. I guess people that didn't grow up with Perrier think it's gross, and it tastes gross to them. To me, it tastes delicious. But until now, I thought Perrier grapefruit was the pinnacle, peak of anything carbonated natural spring water flavoring, and I still love it, all right? But currently obsessed with this blackberry pomegranate Mountain Valley water. It's not a product placement. I'm getting $0 for this, all right? Just a local health store sells it. I buy it in mass quantities. I buy 8 bottles a week or 8 bottles every 2 weeks. Until I run out of money, then I have to save up. But I just clear it off their shelf, and they're forced to buy case after case for me alone. I buy so many, the bags almost break on the way taking the bag of water to my car. So, we're going to delve deep. Spirits exist. Spirits are real. I've had first-hand contact with spirits to an extreme degree. One of those random social medias I talked about, some guy said, oh, if these guys are fake, show me something real. And I first talked about Gary Galka. Gary Galka, I said, he's a professional. He runs a company called Pro Measure. He's a professional. He makes professional measuring scientific equipment that does scientifically what it's supposed to do. Industries use his stuff. Very professional guy. And then after the fact, after he already has these dozens and dozens of professional meters for various things. Excuse me, it's the Red Bull. They measure volts. They measure, I'm sure, sound. They measure light. They measure whatever they have to measure, okay, for different measuring reasons. Temperature, this and that, here and there, okay? He invented the REM pod and the Mel meter. Genius inventor. Very, very cool guy. Someone responded, oh, that guy thinks he's talking to ghosts. First, we have to justify that ghosts are even real before he can claim he's talking to them. And that's basically how they treated Gary. And he's out of the picture. He doesn't even know the threat exists. And I'm defending him and saying, hey, you know what? He's legit, all right? Sure, some EVPs are hard to understand. But this guy, Gary, has 1 million recordings. I don't know, maybe 1,000, maybe 10,000, I don't know. But all I can say is he has thousands of recordings of, hey, yes, no, hey, yes, no, hey, yes, no. You can hear hey, you can hear yes, and you can hear no. You can hear complicated, sophisticated words. But it's in static, through a radio, with no antenna, not going anywhere. This dude's a scientific genius, okay? He can reverse it, he can cut it off, speed it up. He has many modes, and I bought a couple pieces of his equipment. Yeah, I have 2 REM pods. No, I have 1 REM pod. I have 2 Mel meters. I have his new device, which he's tweaking. It seems like he's making a new model of it, and I haven't really used it much. But he has a how-to on how to properly use it, properly set it up. It's a pretty complicated piece of equipment. So I have to go back to that YouTube video, go through the exact button-pushing process to set it up precisely, so when the spirits try to communicate, if they try to communicate, it's a lot clearer. I understand there's a lot of hoaxers out there. I remember even an Art Bell interview where a guest said, hey, there's a guy in the 80s, I think he was in the 80s, who built a spirit communication device. And he died. And then someone found it. And then the person who invented it talked to the person who found it, or whatever the case. See, that's very far-fetched. And even I am very skeptical that that was ever real, because I personally have communicated with spirits using different devices here and there, and just listening to audio that I record and I can't hear it in the moment, and then I play it back and I can hear it. That's most of the time. So it's rarely real time. So that's why I got this Gary Galka device. I'm going to try to hear in real time spirits. But I have heard real time spirits before. And it's definitely unsettling and freaky, okay? It's not for everyone. Don't delve into it. If you have even one shred of one doubt whether you should ghost hunt or not, whether you should invest a bunch of money in ghost hunting equipment or not, if you have even one shred of one doubt, trust your instinct, trust your gut, and don't ghost investigate. Because unlike the extreme skeptics who will say there's nothing there, there's nothing to fear because there's nothing there, nothing, it's all fake, there's nothing, science hasn't proven nothing. So it is there, see? I've gone there, done that, communicated, talked to the spirits. They are there, okay? When you get to the other side, they are there. They do communicate. And they follow a set of guidelines, if you will, a set of laws, if you will. And they act the same every single time. They act like trickster demons every single time. And by trickster demons, I mean spirits 99% of the time. If you ask them a very simple yes or no question, they'll dance around it as much as possible, because that's how a demon is going to respond to a simple question. It even says in the Bible, and you can take this out of context, put this in context. You can use it in different contexts, and I don't know the verse. You can look it up, okay? But it says in the Bible, when you're asking someone a question, and this is talking about human to human. This isn't even in the context of spirits that I know of. But it says in the Bible, any more than yes or no is evil. Any more than yes or no is evil. And that's probably specifically talking about yes or no questions. So basically, that can really be applied to spirit communications. Because when you communicate with spirits, yes or no is a standard. Because they can give so few words, because they can communicate between the veil of dimensions so difficultly, what I mean to say is obviously it's extremely difficult for spirits to communicate, all right? Extremely hard for them. Unless they over the top want to communicate, but even then, you'll be lucky to get a couple words. So when Gary Galka gets a string of 5 words, he's like, wow, that's the same voice, 5 words. That's pretty phenomenal. And it is scientifically amazing. Why do scientists ignore Gary Galka's evidence? I just got 5 words from what I can prove is not a human being. One of the people on this thread where I'm talking about Gary Galka actually had a shred of common sense and logic and reason and understood, because someone said, how come the scientific community isn't blah, 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 blah. And actually one person said, oh, you know what? Maybe because they'd be throwing their entire scientific careers in the trash if they stick up and support this ghost hunting guy, because it's taboo and it could ruin their career, all right? It's not something someone's going to take lightly and say, oh, you know what? I'm an expert at this, I'm an expert at that. And he went on to say that ghost hunting and spirits evidence of spirits, ghosts, is very similar to how UFOs were regarded not too many years ago, until the military stepped forward and said, you know, we have had some sightings near San Diego, near the water. We've had some UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon. And he went on to say, you know, only because the military stepped forward, some independent military personnel, we know about the interviews and the releases of this and that. The Pentagon's taking it more seriously. They're creating a new UFO task force, or UAP task force more specifically, to simply just, they're opening up Project Blue Book again, Project Paperclip, whatever the case, blah, blah, blah. They're opening up a new thing, all right, to pretend they care about UFOs, pretend they're looking at UFOs. When really, deep down, this is a tangent, of course, UFOs are spirits. So anyway, the UFO community hate it when that is pointed out and mentioned. There are religions that believe UFOs are spirits, and I'm not a member of any of those religions, but I personally believe spirits can, 10 spirits can create 10 lights. They can smash those lights together and create a disc-like light in the sky, egg-shaped light in the sky, whatever the shape they freaking want in the sky. They're shape-shifting demons, do whatever the crap they want, to an extent, but they do have a chain of command. They can't necessarily do everything they want. One thing they can do is communicate with humans that seek out communication, but what they can't do is give crystal clear answers. So when you ask them yes or no questions, they'd be more inclined to, as the Bible says, any more than yes or no is of evil. For example, are you a good spirit? They'll play a game. Occasionally are you an evil spirit? Ding, 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 ding. Yes. Occasionally they will admit it, that they are negative entities. But if you talk about them and to them long enough, I saw a freaking episode of Kesha's ghost hunting show. I watched the whole first season. I don't know if there's a second one, but I watched the whole first season. And Kesha and Kesha's friend, or one of the two, every episode she brings a friend to ghost hunt with her. And it's definitely pretty interesting. I liked the laid-back style, but I wasn't a fan of the non-science. But she's new at it. She can pretend she's an expert all she wants, but she's brand new at it, okay? And so it's understandable. She's not going to focus on science from day one. I don't think she's scientifically inclined or cares too much about the science. It's more of an entertainment thing. It's like an entertainment gig, and she does believe in it, most definitely. And she did have friends bail on her that were scared because they didn't believe in it. They just wanted to be on a TV show. Being on a TV show is one thing, but being on a TV show at a freaking mega haunted house, yikes, you know? Especially for disbelievers. Disbelievers are extra scared of ghosts, of spirits. Because when it's proven they're real, they don't know what to think, they don't know what to believe. They don't have convictions one way or the other, or if they do, they like tend to follow the Hollywood disbelief system. The mainstream will tell you ghosts are fake, spirits are fake. Google will tell you ghosts are fake, because whoever runs Google has that same elitist Hollywood, we know everything, ghosts can't possibly exist mindset. Now, no offense to Google. Google owns YouTube, and they're a fantastic group, bunch of people, bada bing, bada boom. I'm sure they're very diverse, and I'm sure there are ghost believers that work for Google. But I would guarantee you, as a tech company, they are in the non-popular crowd. They would be like the least popular employees in the entire company if they made it known that they believe in ghosts. And that's the type of scrutiny and ostracization a scientific community member would face if they started sticking up for ghost hunters and they started sticking up for the science some ghost hunters actually use and say, hey, this is real. That science proves this is real. This is a real phenomenon. That science proves this is a real phenomenon. Bam! They'd be immediately ejected from the popular kids group in the scientific community. They'd lose their job. They'd be a laughingstock, okay? They'd have to write ghost hunting books for the rest of their life to make money. And they just stood up for one thing, theoretically speaking. Nick Pope, for example. Nick Pope stood up for UFOs being real. But I remember Nick Pope back in the early 90s when he was on the fence. He's like, I didn't see much evidence. Nick Pope in the 90s said, I didn't see much evidence. I went through all the documents. I didn't really see much. Fast forward 20 years. Nick Pope was like, yes, they're real. I saw the evidence. They're real. Now, what changed in Nick Pope's universe to go from I saw everything, there was really not much of there, anything to see. I literally saw all the secret UK documents on UFOs. It was my job to go through them. I didn't really see much of anything. To, they're real. Because money, 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 money. He sells stuff and makes money, 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 money when he says UFOs are real. That's why, okay? So he was definitely more legitimately honest back in the 90s. And now today he pretends to be a UFO mega obsessed dude for the cash in the stash. So to pretend he's not would be untrue unless he's a fan now. Let's just put it this way. I heard a dozen interviews of Nick Pope in the 90s where he literally said, I went through every document. There's really not that much. We don't really know. Most of them were fake. And the ones that were real, unsolved. But I literally looked through every photograph and every document. All the secret ones, didn't really see much of anything. Fast forward. They're real. Ghosts and UFO. Not ghosts. Ghosts are unpopular. UFOs, aliens. Aliens, UFOs. Is that an alien? Is that a UFO? Thumbs up from me. Buy my book. Watch my videos. No offense to Nick Pope. He's a pretty cool dude, I guess, but I'm more of a Stanton Friedman fan. Stanton Friedman was an extreme expert on UFOs. No one forced him or pulled his leg and twisted his arm to be an expert on UFOs. It's just something he was interested in. And he was the #1 expert on the Roswell incident, for example. He said Roswell is almost a black hole. And you can't really get information out of it. The government covers up their cover-ups. And so there's something there because of how many times they covered it up. But what is there at the core? Stanton Friedman basically said, we don't know. It's never been released. They covered up a cover-up, and they kept covering it up. And Stanton Friedman said on Bob Lazar, the dude never went to MIT, never went to Caltech, never went to Stanford, never went to Texas A&M, never went here, never went there, not a single degree in his pedigree. The guy is a liar when it comes to his education. So Bob Lazar's proof that he went to whatever the case may be, Stanford, MIT, which Stanton Friedman said is literally impossible to go to both schools at the same time. Literally impossible to go to both schools. It's as if someone did a search on the most prestigious universities, saw them, and was like, yeah, I went to that one. Oh, and that one too. Yeah. Now, there's not a single student that Bob Lazar ever talked to while going to these two universities in his entire life that can remember that he ever went there. Other than one dude dropped Bob Lazar off at one of those universities a couple of times. As if, like a drug dealer, he's not being dropped off a couple blocks away from the place he's actually going. All I'm saying is this. One time, if not a couple times, someone asked me to drop them off somewhere, all right? And I drop them off, and then they're like, okay, we'll walk from here. I was like, what? I could drop you off at the place you're going. No, we'll walk from here. Because they didn't want me to know where they're actually going, all right? I think something to that effect happened with Bob Lazar and the dude that dropped him off a couple times. But let's say Bob Lazar did get dropped off at this school a couple times. He's probably popping in the library to take advantage of their computer setup, of their books. Whatever the case, doesn't prove he's a student or ever was a student. It just means he was dropped off there a couple times. That's not good enough for me. No professors or teachers or students remember Bob Lazar ever attending a single class. Bob Lazar clearly never went to any of those universities, period. But let's go beyond that, all right? Spirits are real. It's very strange. Bob Lazar mentions how spirits... He talks about spirituality a little bit with his alien stories. Bob Lazar says that the aliens called humans containers, and they talked about reincarnation. Containers, reincarnation, containers, reincarnation. That's definitely a spiritual aspect to these aliens Bob Lazar supposedly reverse engineered their technology from. Whether Bob's talking about reading documents, secret documents, talking about this information, I think that's what it was. He said he was briefed, shown some documents, and in the documents, the aliens call humans containers, and the aliens talk about reincarnation to some extent. That is odd. That is a very odd thing to throw in there. But it doesn't mean anything, all right? It doesn't mean anything. Because Bob Lazar is the type of guy that 50-50, 50% of the money was cut between Bob and a madame of a cat house. And this cat house happened to be in like an apartment complex. Or was it a motel? Something to that effect. All I have to say is he wasn't just the computer guy working for some lady of an establishment he was unaware of. He was very well versed in what was going on. He was very good friends with the madame, and he cut the earnings of the cat house 50-50. So he was the male madame, if you will. He wasn't just the computer guy. In his defense, when he's trying to defend himself, he tried to paint a picture of him just being a computer guy. It was more than that. It was 50-50, literally 50% of the money. So he brags about his setup and his new job to his friend George Knapp. And George Knapp, the first thing that flashes through George Knapp's mind is like freaking Joe Exotic on Tiger King. I'm never going to financially recover from this. So George Knapp sees Bob Lazar's confession of, hey, you want to see my new job? Check out what I do, 50-50. And that's literally a fact. I'm not making up the 50-50 thing. 50% of the money from the earnings of what took place in the cat house went to Bob Lazar's pocket and wallet, okay? Bank account. It was literally probably his only job during this short period of time. You can't judge someone on a short period of time necessarily, all right? But it does paint a picture, all right? I'm trying to be nice. I'm trying to be kind. It does paint a picture of the type of mentality and personality and who we're dealing with. I just watched a documentary on Netflix about a hatchet-wielding hitchhiker or hatchet-wielding homeless guy named Kai. And Kai, he seems like a hero. He seems like a good guy. Later in the documentary, you find out he's full-blown crazy, okay? You find out he's full-blown insane, all right? And so he's been convicted of 50-plus years in prison. 57 years or something to that effect, 50-something years. He probably only got 50-something years because the judge or the jury, whatever the case, saw that he's not all there. If he wasn't crazy, he probably would have got life without parole, period. based on what he did. Watch the documentary yourself. You will see Kai, the hatchet-wielding homeless guy documentary. Interesting. I would say Bob Lazar can be paralleled. Bob Lazar can be seen in Kai, the hatchet-wielding homeless guy. Because Bob Lazar isn't all there, okay? Bob Lazar has a few noodles short of a macaroni dish, and there's something going on up there that has nothing to do with graduating or taking classes at imaginary universities that he never went to. It has to do with bragging to George Knapp that, hey, have you seen my new job? I got a new job. It's super cool. It's not Area 51, but at this motel, I make 50% of the money with this madame at this cat house. Now, he literally bragged to George Knapp about this. George Knapp has a flash. I'm never going to financially recover from this. George Knapp says, you know, I'm going to have my Emmys taken away from me. I'm going to lose my job if you don't come clean immediately, Bob, and stop doing this. It's not a cool job. This isn't good. So George Knapp's a good friend, but also a little bit selfish, because a really cool friend would have been like, let's keep this on the DL, maybe stop doing that. But George Knapp knew that if it came out, it would get back to him. At the same time, George Knapp did want to protect Bob's confession of working at Area 51 and seeing aliens and reverse engineering a flying freaking saucer. Bob Lazar did claim he saw an alien through a window about yay big on a super secure door with a probably needed a secret passcode to even get in the door. But you know, there's the metal grates and glass, really secure door. Bob said he's just walking down the hall one day at S4, and he sees two guys in two white coats and an alien in between the two guys. And he was a short gray alien with big black eyes. Just standard stuff. A Zeta Reticulian. Zeta Reticulian. Zeta Reticulan. Anyway, Bob claims he saw that. I've heard him mention that story a couple times in the 90s. Fast forward to today, Bob won't mention that story ever existed. Bob won't mention that story ever happened. Bob doesn't want to talk about aliens whatsoever in any way, shape, or form. Because Bob knows it makes him sound a little crazy that he saw a gray alien through a window. Okay, it makes him sound a little bit crazy. So he really backs away. So Nick Pope in the 90s was a different person. Bob Lazar in the 90s was a different person. They're happy to say they don't believe in UFOs. They don't see any evidence after going through everything. They were happy to say, you know, I saw an extraterrestrial through a window. Short gray alien, two guys in white lab coats. But the way Bob bragged about the cat house and getting 50% strikes me as extremely odd of the character. Now, I've delved deep into the Bob Lazar story. So deep, deeper than any Joe Rogan fan has ever dug into it. Deeper than Jeremy Corbell has ever dug into it. Deeper than anyone who's a fan of Bob Lazar has ever dug into it. I know the ins and outs, and I know where Bob got his story. Bob literally got the Zeta Reticuli story from someone who was anonymous, but I'm pretty sure the anonymous person was discovered. And so other people have done the research. Even in the 90s, this was known. My conclusion is Bob Lazar pretended to not be a UFO fan, but he was an extreme, psychotic, over-the-top, major UFO fan. Pretended to be nonchalant and worked at Area 51, but he never worked at Area 51. He was a mega fan and begged and wished he could work at Area 51. Fantasized. Theoretically possible, forged a resume that did get him some janitorial mopping job at Area 51. Because even the janitor would have to see the hand scanner and get in there and have the badge and see the break room and see the flying saucer poster at the break room. Bob Lazar said there's a poster at Area 51 that is similar to the it seems to me that it was similar to the I Want to Believe Mulder poster on the X-Files back in the 80s, before the X-Files existed. And Bob says that the poster said a certain catchphrase. And I have all of that on my computer. I have me searching for that poster. You got to understand, I've researched Bob Lazar to such a psychotic degree. I've almost found the poster he's talking about. I almost found it. I found a version of what he quoted, was on the poster. So I do believe he was in a break room, did see a UFO poster. I do believe he may or may not have worked for Area 51. And he may or may not have been a janitor, janitorial service. He may or may not have worked with the chemicals. I heard from an employee of Area 51, that's correct. I personally know of someone that worked in the past for Area 51, not S4, because as far as we know, S4 doesn't exist. But I personally do in real life know someone that did. Now, I don't know them to a great degree, all right? Last time I physically, with my eyeball, saw this person would have been like over 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. Not close friends. He's an acquaintance, so he's not the best bud, and I don't have his phone number. I could probably track it down, but I don't want to bother him because I'm sure he signed NDAs up the butt to anyone who works for Area 51 has to sign an NDA. He's probably not allowed to even say he worked there, but casually with people who he knows super closely, he said, yeah, I worked at Area 51. I worked at cleaning up waste, cleaning up things, cleaning up totally toxic things. For example, jet fuel, cleaning up the jet fuel, super toxic substance. So he talks about stuff like that, all right? And so he was a janitor to an extent, but it's a more sophisticated job than janitor. But I can imagine if Bob Lazar had a similar job, he might be exposed to chemicals that would warp his mind a little bit. Who knows? That is theoretically possible. Bob Lazar did say he took a pine-tasting drink, like he freaking drank a pine sol type of a drink that the Area 51 employees told him to drink, that you have to drink this. And I think he said he lost some of his memory after drinking the pine sol stuff. So it's really late right now, okay? It's like after 1 a.m., okay? I just finished my shift at work. I'm in my garage for insulation reasons. I don't want to be in the house being super loud, waking up the dog, waking up the cat, waking up the people in the house, okay? So that's why I'm in my garage right now. Bob Lazar drank some pine drink. He doesn't mention the pine drink anymore, just like he doesn't mention the alien in the window anymore. So there are certain parts of his story he just never repeats. It's interesting. But I know for a fact Bob Lazar did get a huge chunk of his story from a guy who anonymously posted about it prior to the first appearance and first interview of Bob Lazar when his face was all shadowed. And it was 1 or 2 or 3 years before that shadow interview. Someone posted a thing that only extreme UFO nerds would have ever seen. And that thing was claiming a lot about Zeta Reticulans that Bob quoted verbatim. that Bob quoted from heart, from memory, after reading this other person's account of, who knows, a fantasy they might have made up, a work of fiction they might have written, all right? So that really, for me, seals the deal and puts the nail in the coffin with Bob Lazar, with me personally. It's not even the fact that he can't prove he went to any of those universities. It's not even the fact that scientifically the element 115 he talks about can't physically exist in the form that he claims it did and does. People that say, oh, the element 115 is proof. The element 115 is proof. That's like basically saying marshmallows exist? Then the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man from Ghostbusters exists. Yes, I knew it. Like the level of intelligence on element 115 evaporates into nothing when big element 115 proponents and also huge fans of Bob Lazar are like, solid evidence right there. They don't know nothing of the periodic table, how it even works. To them, they snoozed through the entire periodic table in science class. And so Bob Lazar is literally taking advantage of people that don't know what the periodic table is when he mentions that part of his story. But move aside from the false science of his fake element 115 and the real element 115 has nothing to do with his fantasy element 115. It's the fact that Bob Lazar quotes from a guy about Zeta Reticulans, and that guy posted it 1, 2, 3 years before his shadow interview. Now, Bob could easily say, oh, that's real information and it got leaked somehow and the government actually has those documents on the Zeta Reticulans. You could use that angle, but it goes beyond that, because some parts of this dude's story match up exactly what Bob claims he saw with his eyeballs. So that when you know for a fact, beyond any shadow of a doubt, that Bob just hijacked some previously existing story and tried to tweak it a little bit. Where does he tweak it? Maybe the pine tasting drink, maybe the alien through the window. Maybe those are his tweaks. Maybe those are his tweaks he's not super confident about, so he doesn't repeat. I don't know. But the hand scanner can literally be seen in the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Or is it the fourth kind? Fifth, sixth, seventh kind? Close Encounters of the Something Kind by Steven Spielberg. The hand scanner can literally be seen. So his claim that no one has ever seen it before unless they worked for those facilities. But I could go beyond that and say a janitor has seen those. Doesn't prove you've been to S4. S4 literally has radioactive bombing traces all over the sand, and anyone who traipses through the S4 area can literally die, and has. There's one guy who was a big fan of the Oregon Trail, the Pioneer Trails, the 49ers, history, the pioneers, the old wagon times, and he mapped exactly where the pioneers, the 49ers, just the different pilgrims went through. And apparently, historically, one of those groups went through exactly through this S4 area. And so even though that area was used as a bombing range for literally radioactive stuff by the Area 51, they're just testing out their jets. They're testing out the bombing. It's totally a dead area, a dead, dry lake with no water. It's a dry bed right there. And he doesn't care. This history buff didn't care about that. He really wanted to walk where the pioneers walked. And he did. He traipsed through the thing, and he died due to radioactive exposure. So Bob Lazar is the type of guy that he might be smart enough to know that S4 isn't a radioactive bombing range. It's just one of those catch-22, rock and hard place, impossible to go there even if you wanted to. Storm Area 51, no one could do that. But even if you did, you'd die of radiation poisoning, and you wouldn't see any hangars in the side of a mountain. But you die seeing there's nothing there. The guy who did hike through it said he didn't see anything. He knew about the lore of the stuff, and he wasn't interested in that. He was just interested in walking where the pioneers walked. But in addition, he said he didn't see any aliens or UFOs or anything like that. He said he didn't see anything. I think he even went so far as to say he didn't see any hangars or anything like that. But check out his story for yourself. He has a website where he documented, or someone put up a website for him, perhaps. Rest in peace. That's a sad story. Spirits exist. That guy's spirit is hanging out in the spirit dimension right now. Spirits exist to an extreme degree. The difference between me and another channel is another channel, it's going to have a gimmick. They're going to have a setup. They're going to have a punchline. They're going to have some mechanism where the reason the video is viral is because they're following that viral sensation formula, okay? They're giving money to a homeless guy, and it's fake money. But who cares, because they got the great shot. Or they're giving money to a homeless guy to get the positive likes and views. They're doing something like that, all right? They're investigating at a haunted house with a $10 device, and they're setting up skits. They have lines rehearsed. They have a guy opening a door, and they never show that guy. And there is a video like that of a guy accidentally being seen when he's not supposed to be seen. He plays the ghost for the skit, which is portrayed as real, and so it's deceptive. My channel doesn't have any great entertainment value because I don't consider my channel entertainment. I consider my channel information, okay? I know a lot about spirits because I've had full-blown conversations to an extent, but the conversations are very limited, I'll admit, and there's very limited amount of information you get from them. That's because they're freaking demons. Demons don't like to give more than the bare minimum. There's a Kesha episode of her Kesha ghost hunting show. So her friend is asking the demon, the spirit. Her friend is asking the spirit, are you this? Are you that? Or a bunch of yes or no questions, all right? Are you a male? Are you a female? Or are you old? Are you young? Did you die at such and such? This and this, this and this? Do you lean in this political direction? I don't think she asked political questions, but you get the gist. She asked questions that I'm not going to be even repeating. Questions that have nothing to do with any, let's just put it this way. Questions that can easily be manipulated. And the demon answered yes to questions that the friend of Kesha asking the question, she wanted the answer to be yes. The demon said yes. And then she's talking to herself at this point. This friend of Kesha is having full-blown conversations with themselves, all right? And at this point, the spirit's like, I'll say beep to that. Beep. Yes, I'm cross-dressing, whatever you want me to be. I'm a ghost. I don't really cross-dress, but if you want me to be that, beep, I'm that. And so it's a demon, okay? It's a demon pretending to be what the person wants it to be. So what demons do is they'll answer yes or no questions truthfully 1 time out of maybe 10 times. So they will lie 9 times out of 10, okay? It's going to be different from demon to demon. Maybe they'll lie 50% of the time. Maybe they'll lie 5 times out of 10. It really doesn't matter, because all you need to know is demons can't tell the truth 100% of the time. It's literally against their ability. So that is a secret. It is an occult secret that it's going to be scoffed and mocked and laughed at, but it's a true occult secret. And it is the flip side with angels from on high, angels in heaven. Angels in heaven cannot lie. Angels in heaven have to tell the truth 10 out of 10 times. 100% of the time, angels from heaven have to tell the truth. They couldn't lie even if they wanted to. If they lied, they would cease to be angels. Who knows what happened in that moment? But they don't even have the ability to cease to be an angel. They're in a perfect form of cannot lie, period. Demons are in a horrific form of cannot tell the truth 100% of the time. Demons know that if they lied 100% of the time, you could just reverse what they said to get the truth 100% of the time. So to try to trick you, demons will lie question mark percentage of the time. That way, they can lure you in and suck you in to the point where you're questioning whether it's a human ghost. You're questioning whether it's this poor, sad figure that you're creating some false narrative and the spirit's beeping yes to it. But most definitely, spirits that you communicate via ghost hunting equipment are going to be demons. A huge portion of the time. I would go so far as to say 100% of the time. Because I don't think human ghosts are allowed to communicate with humans, except perhaps on extremely rare, specific conditions, such as a loved one saying goodbye after they pass on. And even then, if the loved one isn't sensitive to the spirit, they'll miss it. They'll miss the goodbye. So probably a huge portion of the time, someone tries to say goodbye, they don't get it. They don't hear it. They don't feel it. They don't sense it. They don't acknowledge it. I've been told goodbye by spirits that I knew in life before they were spirits, when they were in the physical. I have been told goodbye by loved ones who departed and ascended into the spirit realm. So that's one reason I know of a surety of a fact spirits exist. I've literally been given messages. What were those messages? Personal. It's personal information. It's a personal thing. Too personal to share. Now, as far as me communicating with demons and telling you the gross, disgusting, mundane, just the basics of some demon encounter, I don't consider any of them sacred. To an extent, personal or private, to any great extent, but I know that mentioning every single one of them would make me sound crazier than should be perceived. See, I'm not crazy at all. I'm in a garage by myself, like at 2 a.m. at night. But I'm not crazy. I'm a sane person that has had communication with spirits against my will. And I turned that into doing it with my will to try to get evidence. And no matter how much evidence you get, you will never convince the never believer. You will never convince the ultra skeptic. You will never convince someone who has an idea set in their head that God doesn't exist, ghosts don't exist, angels don't exist, the devil doesn't exist. Someone that has that set locked in their mind, they're dead set on that choice they've made. They made a choice, the devil doesn't exist. They've made a choice, God doesn't exist. They've made a choice, a conscious decision and a conscious choice they've made that these spiritual, supernatural, ascended beings below us, above us, whatever the case, they've made that conscious choice that they don't exist. And so it's a foreign concept to them, but whether you believe these things exist or not, they still exist, independent from you existing. See, you're not the center of the universe. These entities in higher dimensions could care less what you believe and what you think, what you lock in your mind, what you close off in your heart. They could care less. They, independently from you, exist. I actually read a lot of books, and I come across some horrific New Age garbage books, and the New Age garbage books tend to lean in the Carl Jung fashion. And I don't know why Carl Jung is so celebrated, but Carl Jung, I'm sure he was a great thinker and this and that here and there. But in my personal opinion, Carl Jung was wrong. Not everything is a figment of your imagination for infinity. Because there are entities that are not a figment of anyone's imagination that exist out there. Just like your cat and dog, a horse running through a field right now in some foreign country exists. Spirits running through a spiritual field in some spiritual dimension on some spiritual planet exist. They're having conversations. They're doing things independent of you existing. It's some type of the same group that don't believe God exists. They don't believe there's another place where beings doing things exist. Because only the here and the now, me going to Costco, getting a sample of these new crackers with cheese, only that exists. Only the crackers and cheese table that I'm taking a sample of at Costco right now. And on another planet right now, there's a group of 1 billion people doing a zillion things. All right. But nope, only that chips, only that cracker, only that cheese sample at Costco exists. Only the cheese sample at Costco exists. So, you know, it makes them feel better about themselves to not think of how populated the universe is. The universe is highly populated in this dimension, and it's highly populated in the next dimension. What's the next dimension? Call it heaven, call it paradise, call it the 5th dimension. Call it whatever the heck you want to call it. It really doesn't matter. Because, to be honest, these names are just creations of man. And on Dragon Ball Z, they just say the next dimension. I'm gonna blast you to the next dimension! And, you know, Vegeta blasted a lot of people to the next dimension. Goku went to the next dimension. And surprisingly, in the next dimension, where Goku's in the spirit world, this is a cartoon. I understand it's a cartoon, okay? But this Eastern cartoon, created in Japan, has a lot of spiritual aspects to it. Goku eats. Goku loves eating, and he eats tons of food in the spirit world. Goku is eating a bunch of rice. And he just eats rice and eats rice and eats an infinite bowls of rice. And he never gets fat because he's just a spirit eating rice. They do believe in the East that one of the greatest things you can give to an ancestor who has passed on is a bowl of rice. A nice steaming bowl of rice. And there's a monk, a leader in his little congregation of Buddhist believers, who said that the bowl of rice should have meat in it, some delicious, succulent meat. The more delicious and nutritious and beautiful this meat in the rice, the more respect you're giving to the passed on loved one. His master passed on, and I'm sure he regularly gives the offering of a bowl of rice with apparently some delicious meat on that rice. And in that rice, that delicious teriyaki rice bowl. That's what it sounds like to me. And this Buddhist monk, he said that spirits can smell. They can smell the food. And they can't eat the food, but they can hover over the food and inhale it. And to a spirit, smelling the food is the equivalent to eating the food. And that perfectly jives with everything I've ever read and heard about spirits interacting with incense. Spirits are obsessed with incense if they like it, and they're repelled and they hate incense if they don't like it. But it really makes you see from the spirit's perspective for a split second. The perspective is, why would a spirit hate incense so much? Because the spirit isn't simply smelling the incense. The spirit is eating the incense. The spirit has the incense through their whole body, and they become the incense almost. And if they don't like the smell, their whole body is this smell they don't like. But if they love it, then they will hang around. If they don't love it, they'll go away. They'll be repelled by it. For example, Palo Santo is a stick saturated in a smell, and you light it. You light this stick from a tree called the Palo Santo stick, the Palo Santo tree, whatever the case. See, I don't know how it's put together. Maybe it's dipped in an oil. I'm not sure, but I got a Palo Santo stick, and I'll show you in a future video. The Ghost Adventures crew, they're big into using the Palo Santo stick to repel demons, particularly bad ones. So I've never lit this stick that I bought. It only cost like $1 or $2. It was cheap enough where I thought, I'll make a video about it. Maybe I'll even test it out. But I don't want to test it out willy-nilly, because I'm very, very, hesitant on ever using, for example, sage. Oh, just light a bunch of sage and put it in the corners of your room and open the windows. Sage your house. The strongest I've ever smelled sage is in places that feel negative to me. So I have an extreme belief that sage actually attracts demons and doesn't repel them. What if demons put out the false info that it repels them when it's one of their favorite smells? Okay, that's the thing about spirits. We don't know anything about them personally. We only know what we've heard in stories that have been retold for thousands of years, unless you do have a personal story. And then you know a piece of the puzzle that no one else knows, except for maybe a few other people who are perceptive enough spiritually to even notice it, let alone remember it and consider it important. But I do know many details about spirits. Perhaps that was a personal detail of that personal spirit, and not all spirits. So I do have a Palo Santo stick. I perhaps will light it, but I don't want to willy-nilly light it, and I don't want to light it in my house. So perhaps I'll light it on a ghost investigation. Perhaps I'll light it at the very end of a ghost investigation to say, goodbye, spirits, fare thee well, leave me alone, thank you very much. But I am going to do ghost hunting investigations here in the year 2023. Man, I can't believe it's 2023. We are in the future. Spirits exist. Now, it sounds crazy for me to just repeat over and over and over and over spirits exist, but the fact is ghosts Human ghosts exist on a human ghost dimension. Demons exist on a demon spirit dimension. Spiritual angels, they exist on some higher dimension. All right. These dimensions aren't floating landscapes of nothingness, an abyss. They're planets. But I would imagine there is a dream-like dimension where it is kind of floating in nothingness. Probably the dimension you see on DMT. I don't know. I've never taken it. Not inclined and not interested. But perhaps you can perceive into this realm of the willy-nilly landscape where you can conjure things with your thoughts. Perhaps it's a prototype land that demons use to put on different costumes and pretend to be famous dead humans. Who knows? But I just watched the movie Exorcist 3. And it's pretty interesting. I wanted to watch all three of the Exorcists after finding out there even is a 2 and 3. And I watched The Exorcist 1 for the first time not too many years ago. We're talking literally 3-4 years ago. I watched Exorcist 1 for the first time ever. Why did I wait so long? Because I was told it's the scariest movie in the world, the scariest movie ever made. And to me, it's not that scary. Because I lived through something a million times scarier in the year 2011, beginning with the extreme incident of 2010. I was talking about sacred things I'm not going to mention and talk about personal things, but I will give in full detail what happened to me in 2010 and 2011. I haven't mentioned every key detail because some of the things are so over the top. A few things are almost cliche, and I purposely held back and haven't mentioned them. It's just the spirit showed something to me. One of the poltergeist demon spirits in the year 2011. For those that don't know, I rented a room in 2011, 2 weeks after noticing nothing. Wasn't looking for anything. I'm not crazy. I just was 9 to 5 working my job at a call center, okay? I went to the call center, did my job, went home. Nothing. 2 weeks. The rent was about $400 a month. I'm not going to go through the whole story because most of you subscribers are well familiar with this story to an extreme degree. I just want to mention for those who don't know, after the 2 weeks of nothingness, which is very similar to a movie, I understand that, but perhaps people that write these movies have had experiences and they incorporate these tiny details. All I can say is the cliche family moving into a haunted house. Oh, don't you love our new house, honey? Oh, it's wonderful. Hey, kids, don't you love the new house? It's awesome. I love it. Oh, can I have this room? Yeah, that's your room. You can have it. I love it. And then a little bit down the road in the movie, I hate this room. It's haunted. So, yeah. The haunted room, all right? You don't find out until they live there a couple months in the movie universe, 2 months later. But in reality, in real life, I rented a room in Santa Maria, California on Drake Drive, and I give the exact freaking address on the Demon Poltergeist Haunting of John Razimus video because it's historically a real thing that actually happened to me, all right? I don't shy away from the real address because 1,000 years in the future when I'm dead, for many, many years, obviously, I wouldn't mind someone doing a ghost investigation at this place and maybe they pick up something. I don't know. All I know is it historically happened to me, and there are famous UK poltergeist stories, famous UK poltergeist houses, and the addresses are publicly plastered. We know about them. Ghost hunters have investigated them. Articles have been written about them. The reason my story has never picked up and has never been viral is because I don't have any evidence, all right? I believe I have evidence, but what I'm saying is, from an extreme never believer, extreme skeptic's perspective, I don't have a great amount of evidence. And I understand that. But anyone who follows me longer than 5 seconds can realize I have an enormous amount of evidence. But the fact is I didn't film any viral videos of the poltergeists doing things. And the reason I didn't film anything is because I was in a situation where after the 2 weeks, probably the first time it happened was me laying in the bed, probably at 6 p.m. I didn't have a TV, so I just had my laptop. I have my laptop open. I'm checking out movies. At the time, I was renting red boxes and physically popping in the DVD and playing movies that way on my Redbox, I had a Redbox account, and I would rent the DVD for $1 and return it, So I'm just watching probably some random movie, and I hear knocks, creaks, what sounds like tapping from a finger, sounds like footsteps on the carpet, and then my pencil holder knocking over, individually, one pencil flying to almost the other side of the room, probably a couple feet down, so maybe not full-blown to the other side of the room, but, a couple feet just pulled out manually, one at a time. Bottle of water, probably 1/10 full, maybe 1/3 full, not much water, in a bottle of water, it's almost empty, close to the pencil holder, knocked over fairly violently, what looks like someone purposely just went, and, these type of events, this type of poltergeist activity happens every single day, every single hour of every single day for 6 months straight. The luggage wheel on my luggage underneath my bed spun. It didn't spin a million times. It only spun just that long. But the fact that my head, my body was just a couple feet away from that, it's pretty unsettling. But this type of stuff would happen every single hour between the time I got home to the cutoff point was around 4 a.m., 5 a.m. I would say it's kind of like 4:30 a.m. Maybe 5 a.m. So they had a window, and I didn't get home at 5 on the dot. I clocked out at 5 on the dot. So I would have got home at 5:15, 5:20, 5:30. So between 5:30 p.m. and 4:30 to 5 a.m., every single hour, at least one thing would be knocked over, creaked, sat on, knocked, pushed, an obvious sound of an obvious entity. Not the train tracks. There was no train. I didn't live near a train. But I'm just trying to give you examples. It wasn't an earthquake. It wasn't tremors. It was an obvious entity. The entity had the personality of a monkey. Just walking through the room. Just doing its monkey stuff. But not particularly a smart monkey. I don't know, kind of acted like a bored monkey that is in a cage in a zoo, and it's kind of throwing a fit. It kind of had the personality of a small monkey, or I guess monkeys are generally small, so I'm just saying not something huge. So perhaps a big monkey throwing a fit in a cage in a zoo. And let's say, I can't really draw a scenario of what's in this zoo. It's my freaking room and this is my stuff, all right? But for some reason or another, there's an invisible entity that acts kind of animalistic in my room for 6 months in a row, between 5:30 p.m. and 4:30 to 5 a.m. What's the cutoff? The thing is, I might have written down a couple notes here and a couple notes there, but even during note-taking, which is very rare, I was going through my attic, and I did find a notebook that had a few scribbles and scrawls of, obviously, during the encounters, because it mentions and it vaguely talks about it, extremely vaguely, to the point where I'm very minimalistic on what I wrote down, because I didn't want the entity to see me write it down. I didn't want the entity to knock over a bunch of stuff and wake me up in the middle of the night, only to gratify that negative entity by seeing me write down what it did, because I didn't want to encourage it to do more. I felt that if I just took notes, that he would encourage it to do more and more and more and more. And it would shake the whole, who knows, it might levitate the bed. Nothing like that ever happened. There was no bed levitation. So there's nothing straight out of a movie that happened. It was subtle, small things for 6 months in a row, except for about 3 months in. This wasn't subtle at all. It jumped on top of me. And when I mentioned this part to people, they're like, oh, it wasn't? You weren't misunderstanding this beautiful angelic being? It wasn't a beautiful angelic being. It's a freaking demon from the gates of hell, okay? But proof that he was a demon from the gates of hell, about 3 months into this 6-month ordeal, which I consider almost an occult rite of passage, almost an initiation into the occult, an initiation into, here's more evidence proving we know that you know. I don't know. All I can say is this. 3 months into this ordeal, I was attacked. It jumped on top of me. I watched the movie From Beyond on Hulu. Hulu was brand new. Alec Baldwin was doing Hulu commercials. I saw that Hulu commercial with Alec Baldwin. Oh, Hulu is a great new thing. Watch movies for free. And back then, Hulu was primarily free. They were easing into the subscription model. They were obviously trying to catch up to Netflix, which were the first streaming platform to really hit it big. And Redbox sales were disappearing, I'm sure, very quickly, because this new thing, Netflix, was taking over the movie scene. Anyway, Alec Baldwin did a Hulu commercial, whatever the case, all right? Doesn't matter. That's probably the first time I've ever even heard of what Hulu is that Alec Baldwin commercial. That's literally the reason I went to Hulu.com. I've never paid for Hulu, never had a Hulu subscription. I just created a free account back in the year 2011. Anyway, I'm seeing a pretty good variety of movies on Hulu for free. I think they did have a paid model even back then, but they had such a good free model that I don't even remember commercials. Maybe there's one commercial that played at the beginning. I don't know. But I don't remember commercials. So I'm watching From Beyond. The movie is called From Beyond. And it's a movie about a guy who's a scientist, a mad scientist, who creates a device. And when you turn on this device, you can see ghosts, you can see spirits, you can see the astral plane, you can see the floating things that are there at all times. When you turn it off, you don't see them anymore. Not only can you see them when you turn it on, they could bump into you and interact with you. They can bite you. They can scratch you. You turn it off, they can't. So it's a pretty freaky movie. It didn't scare me, but it's an 80s horror movie. And so it's more corny than it is scary. I actually am a fan of the special effects because they're real. It's not CGI. It's like melting wax faces, stuff like that. You know, like the... I'm not a fan of horror in any way, shape, or form. I've tended to become more of a fan of thrillers like The Ninth Gate. But full-blown horror, I've never seen any of the Saw movies, for example. I'm 0% interested. Because I don't like horror, okay? I don't like it. But I was scrolling through the 80s movies on Hulu, and I saw From Beyond. Never heard of it, never saw it. It looked interesting. It actually has a very interesting story. And it very much reminded me of Jack Parsons. Because this guy was a genius, mad scientist, but he also had a room with a bunch of weird stuff that exactly reminded me of the Jack Parsons story. Jack Parsons aside, we get to the point where the guy in the movie turns on the device and like an astral fish, ghost fish, he can see it floating in his room with the device, you know. And he's like, wow, that's amazing. I could see this ghost fish. Wow, that's so cool. And the ghost fish freaking bites him or something. It like bites his hand. What the freak? And he turns off the device and he's like bleeding from some astral ghost fish. And about that exact moment, I'm like, okay, I mean, I will watch the rest of this. I'm only so much in. I estimate 15 minutes in, but you can get to that ghost fish biting him scene, and that's how far I was into the movie. That's when I turned it off. Because it was, at this point, pretty late in the evening for me, knowing that I have to work the next day, I turned it off. And at that moment, you know, I just put my laptop on the table beside my bed. And I already had my pillow and blanket ready to go. I walked over to turn off my light. I had my light connected to the switch, so I had to walk over to flip the switch and get back into bed. So this is how fast the events transpired. I put my laptop on the table. I walk only a couple steps. It's literally probably 3 steps, maybe even 2 steps. The switch is very close to the bed, but far enough where it's close to the corner of the bed, adjacent to the corner of the bed. So I get out of bed, walk, you know, a couple steps, flip the switch, walk back to my bed, and before I even have my head on the pillow, before my head is on the pillow, okay, I want to make it crystal clear. I just flipped off a switch literally near the corner of the end of my bed, okay? Very few feet away from my bed. My bed is less than 2 feet away from the wall. And that wall is where the switch was. Probably 1.5 feet, maybe, okay, maybe it's 2 feet. But no more than 2 feet. It's a pretty small room. Flip the switch, get in bed. I'm getting the blankets on me. And I'm about to position myself on the pillow. And that's when the demon jumped on top of me. The poltergeist demon in my room, not in any movie, not in any book, not in any imagination, not in any fantasy. I literally have skeptics telling me, oh, this is just a story you invented to cover up some horrific tragedy. No, I was never in any horrific tragedy. This is a literal spirit jumped on top of my chest. It grabbed my throat. And I've told this story many, 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 many times, but I wanted to tell this story in this elaborate detail, okay? For the new viewers, new listeners, and for the old ones. I don't think they've heard it in this extreme detail. Just watch From Beyond for a couple minutes. It's late. Flip off the switch. I'm starting to get in bed. When the thing jumps on top of me, I first feel pressure right here, and then I feel it here, down to the end of my stomach, and down to the end of my torso. Then I feel a grip from hands on my neck. I feel a grip from a hand over my mouth. And just as I'm about to speak, because at this point I'm already used to casting these demons out of my room in the name of Jesus. I never used any other name other than Jesus, other than maybe I said it in the power of God, in God's name. Maybe I've said that a couple times. Because I literally casted these demons out of my room 100 times, if not more than 100 times. It might have been as few as 50 times. Because after I casted them out 50 times, I started to realize that they're not going anywhere. But this is what happened. Jumps on top of me, a weight, an invisible weight. I can't see it. And I'm not experiencing sleep paralysis. For sleep paralysis to transpire, for sleep paralysis to take place scientifically, you have to be asleep, all right? I was 0% asleep, just about to position my head for the pillow. I wasn't even tired. I went to bed. It was probably 10-ish p.m. I went to bed because I wanted to get enough ample sleep for my work the next day, knowing I'm probably going to hear bumps in the night all freaking night. Because that's what these particular poltergeists were good at, is just making creaks and sitting sounds and walking sounds and footstep sounds and knocking sounds all night long. Not in some distant place far away, like in the hallway or the kitchen, but exactly in the vicinity of where I was trying to sleep every night. Feet away, inches away. But this is the first time they jumped on top of me. So they've been attacking the stuff in my room for 3 months at this point. And when I turned off the movie I was playing, only upon looking back on it did I realize that the poltergeist demon, or I believe he was 2 demons, the poltergeist demons in my room were watching this 80s horror movie From Beyond with me while I was watching it. It's as if they were sitting on that table beside me watching, and these are demons from the gates of hell, okay? These are literal demons from hell. Now, I can tell you one thing. Demons from hell love horror movies. They're fans of horror movies. To them, they're watching cartoons. They love it. The more gore, the better. They love it. So this guy turns on the device. A freaking demon astral fish bites him. And these invisible entities sitting beside me watching the movie, they can really identify with that demon astral fish, okay? Because they're freaking demon animals themselves, all right? And they're probably thinking in their little demonic spirit minds, oh yeah, I wish such a device could exist so we could attack this guy. But such a device doesn't exist, and we can't attack this guy like we want to. We can only knock over a few pencils, knock on the table, knock over the water. We can step on things, knock over things, pull things down, spin the wheel on his luggage. We really can't bite his hand like they did in that movie. We can't really bite his face. We can't do that. Or can we? Let's give it a shot. So I think I ticked off the poltergeist demons in my room when I turned off the horror movie, not even knowing they're watching it with me. Because I have to admit, during the few minutes I was watching the movie and before, it was a lull. It was a quiet lull. I wouldn't say there was peace, because there was always the presence of negative entities, of negative spirits in the room. But the lull was because I was almost entertaining these demons beside me, not knowing they're there, with this 80s horror movie from beyond. An H.P. Lovecraft story adapted to this movie. So they're big fans of H.P. Lovecraft, these freaking demons, okay? They jump on top of me. I feel the hand on my throat. So the first hand I felt was on my throat. The second hand I felt was over my mouth. And the third hand I felt was on my tongue. And I didn't really even notice the third hand on my tongue until I tried to cast them out in the name of Jesus. I said, I couldn't say anything. That's when I knew my tongue was bound by these demons. They did this. First I have a weight on my chest. Then I have a weight on my throat. And I have a weight over my lips, where I can't even open up my lips. And I have a weight inside my mouth on my tongue, where I can't talk. So after I realized I can't talk, and it was a very frightful experience. I would say easily the most frightful experience of my entire life is when these demons jumped on top of me. So anything any human being has ever done for me, done against me, done to bother me, and I can't think of any great things any humans have ever done to bother me, okay? I have no traumatic stories to tell. And perhaps that's one of the reasons I was chosen to be harassed by negative entities, by poltergeists, by demons for 6 months in a row, every single day from 5:30 p.m. to approximately 5 a.m. every single day for 6 months in the year 2011. Because I have had such a cushy life of nothing horrific, tragic happening to me, okay? I have never lived on the streets. I've never been to war in terms of going overseas and fighting for my country. I've never done any of those things, okay? And so I've had a pretty blessed, cushy, soft life, perhaps from the perspective of these negative entities. I don't know how and why they got permission to harass me, but I am under the extreme impression they did get permission, actual spiritual permission from the higher-ups. So I don't like to compare myself to any religious figure or any biblical figure, but this is a parallel which logically can be used. I'm not Job on any level, but Job was greatly harassed by the devil after God agreed that the devil could harass Job. Now, Job, his entire family were killed by the devil, okay? His entire livelihood was destroyed by the devil, all right? All of his house, property, flocks, family, everything taken from Job. He was treated like dirt, and everyone treated him like garbage. Now, even then, he praised God's name, praised and believed, and was a firm believer, even then, because God knew the heart of Job. God knew that in Job's heart, he's never going to not believe. I have to admit, in no way, shape, or form have I ever had any hardships like Job, okay? Other than a microscopic version of the devil's minions harassing me for 6 months, and me telling the story and very few people believing. But even during all of the harassment, I did believe God existed, and I did have faith in God, and I knew everything was going to be okay, but I also didn't know it was going to last 6 months. I thought it was going to last forever. So I was in some nightmare scenario where I thought these demons were going to be harassing me for eternity, at least my mortality on earth. I thought for 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, 100 years, however long I lived on this earth. Obviously, it wouldn't be 100 years, but however long I lived, I thought I would be stuck with these demons harassing me for the rest of my life. So I'm glad it was only 6 months. I'm happy it was only 6 months. 6 months is a really occult number. They say there's an Abramelin ritual that lasts 6 months. There's a lot of persnickety, sarcastic, snide individuals that are like, it doesn't last 6 months. It lasts exactly this many months if you look at the translation. See, I can make fun of anybody on any level and any perspective. But the fact is, there is an occult ritual, Abramelin, famously 6 months, all right? Sure, there might be another month, but I'm specifically talking about my 6-month comparison of my poltergeist harassment. Now, I'm not an entertainer. I don't tell jokes. There's no punchline. There's no setup. There's no gimmick. There's no anything. I'm just telling a story of demons jumping on me. So in my head, I'm saying, in the name of Jesus, please help me get these things off of me. In the name of Jesus, cast them out of my room. In the name of Jesus, please help me cast these negative entities out of my room. Cast them off of me. I had to say it in my head 10 times before my tongue was loosed enough to be able to say it one time with my tongue. Only when I was able to say it with my tongue did they leave. All the weight and all the hand grabbing on my throat, mouth, and tongue, they were gone. They were only gone for 1 hour. 1 hour later, they returned. And when they returned, they made their extreme introduction known, all right? They'll be knocking and banging, and we're back. Knock, bang, knock, and bang. Extra rat-a-tat-tap on the wall and the table. Just for me, just so I know that I'm not safe anymore. I'm in a room haunted by 2 poltergeist demons. So that's the first clue that I got, that there was more than one. I felt 3 hands. And there's probably 2 hands around my throat, to be honest. Probably one grabbed my throat. Probably the other did the mouth and tongue. Because these entities are optically invisible to me, it could have been a 4-handed demon, for all I know. But I'm under the impression it was 2 independent, imp-like, small, monkey-like in stature. We're talking a chimpanzee-sized entity. Because when it was on me, the weight didn't go very far. The weight went down to the end of my torso. I might have felt some weight on the upper part of my legs, but I definitely didn't feel any weight on my knees. So the weight was definitely focused up here, and I did try to push them off. I literally had my hands free. You got to understand, it wasn't sleep paralysis. My hands were free to move. So when I tried to push them off, my hands just went right through them. My hands went right through an entity that's having weight on me. I couldn't do anything with the hands grabbing my throat. It was still there. Hands grabbing my mouth, still there. So I was able to move my hands. But I don't think I moved my hands that much. I think I moved them a little bit like this. I think I mostly would have done something like this. And I did try to push them off once or twice. So that's interesting. An entity can grab you, and you can't grab back. So that was the first clue, the multiple hands, feeling the multiple hands. What did the hands feel like? They felt like small hands, but small hands with a fierce grip. I've never been grabbed by small hands, so I can't compare it to anything, but perhaps it would be like being grabbed by just something with small hands. Chimpanzees, for example, probably have pretty big hands. So I don't believe these entities were monkeys, chimpanzees, or anything like that. But maybe the stature was like that. Imp demons. Just because they're small demons, it doesn't mean they're innocent and peaceful. It doesn't mean their tricksterness is a delight. It was like having a front row seat to a demonic magic show every single night for 6 months in a row. I casted them out in the name of Jesus Christ at least 50 times, probably 100 times. They always came back 1 hour later. The second huge clue that there was 2 poltergeist demons was one time I was checking to make sure my door that leads to the hallway was locked and not unlocked, because I was about to go to sleep. This is a totally different night. This wasn't the from beyond jumping on top of me and casting them out. It wasn't that night. It was a different night. I don't particularly remember too much. See, sometimes there was a lull and only one creak, only one snap and pop of a weird sound on a surface or object. On average, once every hour, I would hear something like that. But there would definitely be 3 hours of silence and nothing. Here and there. But it was researching the subject. It was a psychotically extremely intense hotbed of poltergeist activity in my room, based on the frequency, based on how many, based on what I saw in front of my face. I have researched the subject years after. I didn't even start researching. Well, I did maybe type in the word poltergeist while I was being harassed by poltergeists, and most of the results were Steven Spielberg's movie. And it really disappointed me that there's not really many people taking it too seriously. But after I have researched it for many years, for hundreds of years, it's been taken seriously. And even 50 years ago, scientists took it seriously as a serious actual phenomenon. Today, we're in the realm of Hollywood disbelievers. But even as recent as 50 years ago, there were scientific thesis studies, papers, and opinions on it, on what the phenomenon is. And the consensus back then is the same to anyone who even acknowledges it's real today, is that it's all in the mind. Perhaps an overactive imagination and some stressful encounter, or a teen going through puberty. That doesn't apply to me in any way, shape, or form. I'm literally a person harassed by demonic entities. But it comes off sounding like someone that does drugs or someone that does a lot of alcohol. That's not me, okay? I was stone cold sober during the 6 months. I'm trying to think. I'm sure there was a moment someone had a birthday party and they offered me a glass of champagne. Something to that microscopic effect. But I don't drink, didn't drink, don't drink. I mean, sure, here and there I will taste a Zima from Japan, all right? But I'm not a drinker. I don't drink, all right? Okay, I'll take a photograph of a pina colada from time to time. But I'm talking about in the year 2011, all right? Zero. I drank 0% back in 2011. And as far as drugs go, as far as prescriptions, anyone who has access, and it's a private thing, private matter, but would see I take 0 prescriptions. When I get a headache, I take ibuprofen because a doctor actually recommended ibuprofen as the safest drug you can use for headaches, as aspirin and Tylenol can have negative effects if you take too much. But ibuprofen is the safest. And so ever since that advice, which I got back in, because I get bad headaches sometimes. Back when I was a kid, I got bad headaches to the point where I got migraines, extreme migraines. So many extreme migraines that I had a couple CAT scans done. so they could see why I'm having these extreme migraines. And they found out with the CAT scans that this nasal cavity opening on my skull underneath my nose is narrow on this particular nostril. The skull is more narrow than it should be, which causes a lot of buildup in my sinuses. And when it's cloudy outside, I can get a migraine because my sinuses don't have the same pressure as someone else. It'll have more pressure and I can get migraines. But other than ibuprofen and occasionally Tylenol, I do not do any drugs whatsoever other than Tums. Usually have some Tums handy. I don't see any Tums handy. But you know what I do see handy? Take a guess. Ibuprofen. Walmart ibuprofen. Why? Because it's the only thing I do. And it's like 1 or 2 if I have a headache. And it's 3 or 4 if I have a migraine. Usually does the trick in an hour or 2. With some food in the body and some good rest. Bada bing, bada boom. I don't do anything, any substance. I don't have any traumatic events, and I don't have any influence of any substances in any way, shape, or form that could lead to the belief that there's entities bothering me, because there actually were entities bothering me. It's a true story, actually happened. I've spent $4,000, $5,000 on ghost hunting equipment to capture and prove that spirits exist. I have done so, but not satisfactory to someone who already has it locked in their mind that such a thing doesn't exist. That's the thing. When you show someone that has locked in their mind that God doesn't exist, spirits don't exist, the devil doesn't exist, angels don't exist, they have that dead set in their heart. That doesn't exist. Here's evidence it does exist. That you faked it. It's fake. They'll always run away from the evidence. It's bizarre to see. Anyway, the second major reason I believe it was 2 poltergeists is because I'm about to check if my door was locked. My door was locked. It's just I didn't want my door to be unlocked. I had 2... There's 4 people living in the house, all right? The landlady lived in the garage. She made up the garage to be a room with a bed and everything. Because I personally believe she wanted or needed the extra income. So I'm living in the master bedroom. Probably her old room. She's living in the garage, which is actually even a bigger room because it's a garage. There's a sushi chef living in one of the rooms. And then there's just a guy who worked at a drugstore in the other room. So I'm living in the master bedroom, working at a call center. The room actually connecting the other side of my wall, the other side of the closet wall, would be the sushi chef. Then down the hall from me, only a few feet, it's a very small hall, we have the guy who is a fan of horror novels, and he works at a drugstore. He told me this information after we had a conversation for an hour or so, and I did mention my poltergeist encounters to him, and he's one of the few human beings I even mentioned it to. Although I did mention it to the landlady only on the day that I was moving out forever. I did mention the poltergeist activity to her only on that day. Why? Because A, I didn't want to freak her out. B, I wanted her to know that it happened. Just in case it happened to any future tenants. I wanted at least her to have a record. Okay, it happened to that tenant. It didn't happen to this tenant, so maybe nothing. But let's just put it this way. I think he was targeting me, and I think the house is receptive to negative spirits. But I don't think the house is perhaps haunted anymore, because I think that 6-month encounter was for me and not for the next tenant, not for the previous tenant, but for me specifically. Because I was a host, I was a victim, I was a target of these poltergeist demonic beings. Kind of like the case of the people in the UK back in the 70s that were harassed by poltergeists. Current tenants may not experience anything. It doesn't mean their story wasn't true. It means they were literally targeted by the devil. And you, who might be the current owner, current tenants, are not targeted by the devil. Thank goodness. Count your blessings. And so, Zach Bagans, leader of the Ghost Adventures crew, says, "I am haunted," in one of his books. Maybe that's even the title. I don't know. I'm pretty sure that's the title. I am haunted. And so Zach understands that he's haunted. No matter where he goes, spirits follow him to an extent. No matter where I go, spirits follow me to an extent. Against my will, I'll have you know. Because every ghost investigation I go to, I say, I go in peace. Please don't follow me. But that's not going to stop them. They're still going to follow you to an extent. Negative entities exist. So I'm making sure the door is locked in my room. It is locked. It says low battery on my phone, but I have 2 foam cushions on a box. So we have a U-Haul box, a medium U-Haul box, and 2 seat cushions that I ripped the fabric off of because I didn't like the fabric. I bought them specifically to be covered for my chairs. I have 2 space-age chairs. It's hard to find space-age pillows. So I was going to make my own space-age pillows and not pay $200 on the internet. I literally went to thrift stores and garage sales, and I bought 2 chairs, threw away the chairs, just got them for the cushions, and the chairs were like $5 a piece. So I got 2 cushions for $10, and they were the right size. They're vintage, and I was going to cover them myself. So I checked to see if the door's locked, so the landlady or roommate across the hall, whatever, can't barge in when I'm sleeping. They never had, but, just for privacy, security reasons. It's locked, no big deal. As I'm turning around to go back to my bed, I have 1 chair. How many chairs do I have? 3 chairs in the room at this point? So I think I have 2 or 3 chairs in the room, but I don't really sit in them. I just have them as my collection of mid-century chairs. And I have a couple tables, and I have my bed. So I watch, shows on my bed for the most part, okay? As I'm turning to go back to my bed, I see an impression, a huge impression on the foam pillows that with no covering. So this is raw foam. I see pushed down with a huge impression. The impression was this big. And it looked like an entity sitting on the cushion, playfully pushing it down and sitting on it. It kind of looked like the shape of a bum, but really, 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 really thinking about it, it was almost a perfect shape like this. So if it was a bum sitting on it, it was a bum wearing a robe. All I can say is I didn't see 2 cheeks. I saw just a perfect oval pushed down on. This is invisible entities sitting down on my foam cushions. It was 2 stacked foam cushions, and they pushed down with such strength that I did try to recreate how much weight was pushed down on them. And a number of pounds of weight. We're talking, they really pushed it down. They pushed it down this far down. Easily an inch and a half. They pushed it down. These cushions were about this big each. So we got a couple cushions here. And they pushed it down considerably so I could see the impression. And after it was pushed down, as the first one is pushing down, I was amazed and just stood there. I was literally 1.5 to 2 feet away from these cushions at the time, to the point where I could have waved my hand directly over the cushion to feel if the entity was there. But I was about to wave my hand over, but I was kind of frozen in fear that I didn't want to touch them. I didn't want to touch them and interact with them. I didn't want to feel their energy. So I restrained myself from waving my hand, because it wasn't a magic trick. It wasn't fun. It wasn't entertaining. It was freaky. It pushes down about this slow, gets back up, as in puffs back up. And then as I'm staring at it, it happens a second time. It pushes down, gets back up. Looking back on that, it was 2 poltergeist demons that both wanted to experience these foam cushions. I can tell you that I did push my hands down on them multiple times, really anticipating, this is a comfortable cushion. This will be good for my chair. Anticipating getting them covered. So I put these cushions in the garage when I moved in back with my parents, because that call center job didn't work out. Everyone got laid off at the entire call center division that I worked in. The entire client canceled every employee. So everyone was laid off. I was rehirable to go to a different position, lower and less pay, and I wasn't interested. So I moved back with my parents for a little bit, and I had these cushions in their garage for a year or so. And my mom saw these cushions. It bothered her. She donated them to Goodwill, donated them to charity, ditched them, chucked them. Who knows? She threw them away. She donated them, she told me. I was like, these are historical objects. Demons pushed these down. Luckily, I did hold them up to the camera and try to recreate it in one of my videos. This is probably months before she threw them away, donated them. They're not necessarily any great thing, but they're a piece of history that is now gone. But it's okay. No big deal. Spirits exist. My phone's about to die. I will be ghost investigating this year. Until next time, be seeing you. This is John Razimus Houston with Mysterialis Ghost Investigation.